All right, well, by my clock, it's 12:30, so I think we will go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today for this webinar, Support and Resources for Adult Siblings of People with Disabilities. We are so glad that each of you are here. We want to let you know that today's webinar is being recorded, and both the recording and the PowerPoints will be made available through the Texas Sibling Network. I want to let you know too, we want to be interactive. At this point, the way the webinar is structured, all participants are muted, so we can't hear you, although hopefully you can hear us. But we do welcome you to enter questions into the chat box if you have them, and we'll do our best to address them as we're going through the webinar. But we have intentionally left time at the end of the webinar for questions. So if you put something into the chat box and we don't immediately answer it, please know that we've seen it and we may just be waiting for the right time to answer you, which may be at the end or at some other point during the webinar itself. This webinar is being made possible today with grant funding from the Texas Council on Developmental Disabilities, or TCDD. TCDD is supporting the growth of the Texas Sibling Network, led by the Texas Center for Disability Studies in collaboration with the Sibling Leadership Network. We are excited to share more with you about the growing Texas Sibling Network a little bit later in the presentation when we talk about resources for siblings.
And hi everyone, my name is Katie Arnold, and today Amy and I will be presenting this webinar. We are both from the Sibling Leadership Network, or SLN for short. The SLN is a national nonprofit whose mission is to provide siblings of individuals with disabilities the information, support, and tools to advocate with their brothers and sisters and to promote the issues important to them and their entire families. As a national nonprofit, the SLN provides information and peer support to siblings of people with disabilities across the lifespan. We now have over 6,000 members across the country. The SLN is welcoming to siblings of people with all types of disabilities, and we tend to draw the most members as siblings of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The SLN is primarily a volunteer organization, and we have a dedicated group from across the country helping to build and grow the network. I want to invite each of you to join the SLN if you haven't already. It's free and easy. You can just sign up on our website, which is siblingleadership.org. You don't have to be a sibling to get involved. Sibling supporters are really important to our network. And we consider sibling supporters to be anyone who supports siblings, including parents and other family members, professionals, friends, and colleagues of siblings. Currently, the SLN has 27 chapters in states with the vision that eventually every state will have a sibling chapter. Texas Sibling Network is the Texas chapter of the national SLN, which we're very excited about. Texas Sibling Network is doing great work to support siblings, and when we get to the resource section of this presentation later, we're going to provide you with more information about ways that you can get involved in the Texas Sibling Network. So let me give a little bit of information about myself to start off. I became the first part-time executive director of the Sibling Leadership Network in 2012, and this is a photo of me and my siblings. I'm the one in the orange scarf. I'm the second oldest of 5, and we're all about 2 years apart. My sister Patrice, with an intellectual disability, is the middle of all 5 of us, and in this photo she's wearing the blue dress and we're standing back to back. Patrice lives in New Jersey in a supported living arrangement that she moved into a few years ago in the community that we grew up in, which is very rare. She's about 10 minutes from my parents and my 2 brothers and their families. My youngest sister, Maggie, lives in Boston with her husband and children. So Maggie and I are both out-of-state siblings. Me and my siblings all have very different personalities. It's amazing how, coming from the same family, we all turn out so differently. And I've been working at the Institute on Disability and Human Development, Illinois University Center of Excellence in Developmental Disabilities, or UCED, for over 16 years.
Hello, I'm Amy Holm. I'm the project manager for the Sibling Leadership Network. My professional background is as a clinical social worker, and I live in the Chicago suburbs. I am the big sister, and Emily is my younger sister. She would probably also tell you that she is the funnier sister, which is accurate. Emily lives with my parents about a mile from my house, and she has a great sense of humor, is a strong self-advocate, and loves to spend time with her friends and her family. Emily also has Down syndrome, and I'm glad that she's my sister. So now that you know a little bit about us, we would like to know a little bit more about you. We're wondering if you're a sibling of a person with a disability, a parent, a self-advocate, a family member, a professional, or some other relationship. And so we will launch a poll here, and you can indicate if you, please check all that apply. We know for many people, more than one of these might be accurate.
Great, I see people filling it out. I'll give it a little longer to let everybody try to respond. And then I'll share the results in a minute. So it looks like we have the majority of people are siblings on the call, and then we also have some family members who are not siblings or parents, as well as over half of people are professionals in the disability field. And so we have a nice mix of siblings, family members, and professionals, and I'm sure many of you probably wear multiple hats, which is great. So here, I'm going to see if I can share the results. Are you able to see the results, Amy?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So thank you all for completing that. So we know a little bit about you. So I'm going to start out providing some context. Why is it important to focus on the experience of siblings? So many of you who are siblings probably know this is a no-brainer, but I think it's important that we also kind of know this information and really claim it. So siblings are often each other's first playmates and friends, as well as tormentor. Our siblings help prepare us for the world in many ways as we learn how to fight and make up, how to confide in and comfort one another. And while the relationship changes over time, siblings often have the longest relationship of their lives with each other. We'll be there for each other 20 plus years longer than our parents often. And the peer nature of the sibling relationship uniquely positions us to support each other to lead self-determined lives. And this can include many different areas such as employment, voting, transportation, relationships and sexuality, healthcare, housing supports, and a lot more. Yet the sibling experience is often overlooked and sometimes even forgotten. Traditional service and support structures typically focus on the roles that parents play in the lives of their children with disabilities, while less attention has been given to the role that siblings play. Each sibling has a unique experience. Even each child within a family can have a very different perception. Yet there's often similarities within that difference. We're grateful for the chance to come together today to talk about the important role of siblings. The SLN has created resources that are available for siblings of all ages. We know that there are important needs and opportunities for siblings ranging from early childhood through end of life. We've developed a resource sheet that outlines sibling needs across the life course, and we'll make it available when we send out. We'll be able to send this to you afterwards, and it's also on our website. During our time together today, we'll be focusing on adult siblings. We find that adult siblings need a lot of information and peer support. The adult years bring about things that siblings have been thinking and wondering about, but often feel unprepared to walk together with their siblings. Adulthood is a time when roles are being transitioned and renegotiated. People are finding life partners, potentially getting married, maybe having children, exploring and excelling in their careers, making new friends, changing geographic locations, changing homes, and potentially helping care for their older relatives. For siblings of people with disabilities, they may have additional roles that they play with siblings. As siblings, we often become the next generation of caregivers and supporters when parents are no longer able to fill this role. You've probably heard of the sandwich generation, but how many of you know the term club sandwich generation? Siblings are referred to often as the club sandwich generation due to the multiple caregiving responsibilities siblings juggle for their aging parents, their own children, as well as the extra layer of their brother or sister with disabilities. This can be overwhelming and sort of too big to take a bite out of, as the photo of the little girl shows trying to fit the big sandwich in her mouth. Future planning is something that can help make this club sandwich more manageable, though it can be a difficult process to start. Siblings usually have much to learn about the service system and how to navigate it. We don't live and breathe the day-to-day caregiving over a lifetime the way parents do. There's a very steep learning curve when siblings take on a greater caregiving role, and often this coincides with a time when their family is in crisis, which is not a good thing. Siblings need to be prepared sooner. We need information, and we need to be part of the conversations about future planning and be engaged in the process to the extent that we want to be. Most siblings anticipate taking on greater supportive and caregiving roles in the future. However, many of us are kind of waiting in the wings, so to speak, without really knowing what it means or how to prepare. Information does not always flow naturally down from parents to siblings, yet we're often expected to play a key role in terms of support and caregiving when parents are no longer able to. We often don't even know what we need to know. When I share this slide at sibling conferences, often I hear the siblings who are caregivers and have taken on a caregiver role tell me they feel like the line is actually not steep enough. Many of them feel like it should almost be a straight line up and down with just the huge learning curve that they experience in that transition of becoming more of a primary caregiver for their brother or sister with a disability, and it can be really overwhelming. Amy?
Oh, yep, sorry, I was muted there. Future planning is something that can help make this club sandwich and learning curve more manageable. Though, as Katie said, it can be a difficult process to start. As family members, we know that there are a number of barriers that often prevent families from future planning. First, future planning requires parents and siblings to acknowledge their own mortality, which understandably provokes anxiety. Second, families often don't even know where to start, and they don't have information about potential options to consider for the future. Third, a lack of resources and options is a barrier. For example, families may think that if they don't have large financial resources, then maybe there isn't a point in planning. Fourth, many parents talk about how they don't want to, quote, burden their children with thoughts about the future. Yet, whether parents are talking about it or not, most of us sibs are thinking about it, and maybe we're worrying about it also. In the long run, talking about the future will help alleviate stress by getting things out in the open and making sure people know how to prepare for the future. There's really no easy way to break through these barriers, but it helps to be aware of them, and even naming them sometimes helps. So let's talk a little bit about siblings' role in future planning. What is the sibling role in future planning? It can vary depending on the person and the family, but in general, there are a few roles that siblings could play. Siblings can help identify concerns about the future and get family members sharing. It could be through a family gathering or one-on-one conversations where you ask a few questions like, do you have any worries about the future? Do you envision what the future might look like? So siblings can help plant seeds in the minds of other family members so they can begin slowly thinking about the future, and this might lead to further discussions. Also, siblings can help gather information that could be useful for the family as they plan. Being on this webinar, you're gathering information that you can bring to your family that you could help with in this process. Siblings can advocate for services and supports for their brothers and sisters with disabilities and for their entire families. And also, they can help by connecting and networking with other siblings in similar situations or other families that have started future planning process. I know I've learned a lot by listening to other siblings. So when we talk about future planning, we know that in all families, there's a recognition of both the importance and challenging nature of future planning. We are surely each aware of how truly important the topic is and also how difficult it can be to have conversations and reach agreements. At the Sibling Leadership Network, we recognize that everyone in the family should have a voice and a choice in the process. The process of future planning is often parent-driven, but we want to make sure that siblings of people with disabilities are involved, as well as, of course, the individuals with the disabilities. At the SLN, we respect each person's choice in terms of their involvement and role. For myself, I know as a sibling, I want to support my sister to live the life she wants. And I recognize that by supporting her goals, I'm supporting my own goals. Because the more we can support our sibs to live the life they want, the more we can live our own lives as well. So I think it's helpful to hear personal stories from siblings. I know I've learned a lot from others. And so today I'll tell you a little bit about my story, not because I think that it's a perfect model, but because I think there are some lessons I learned that I'm happy to share. As I said, I have a sister named Emily, and we are each other's only siblings. My sister and I lived several states away for most of our adult lives. After high school, I went away to college and I met my husband and lived happily ever after, so to speak, in Ohio and then in Illinois. My sister also was experiencing lots of great opportunities in our hometown in North Carolina near my parents. So fast forwarding a few years, when my oldest daughter was born, the roles in our family expanded and my sister became an aunt and my parents became grandparents. And around the same time, my parents were starting to consider retirement. And we all acknowledged that we wanted to be a lot closer together. So again, fast forwarding through many years of life, about 3 years ago, my parents and sister moved to Illinois, and now we all live within a mile of each other. This is wonderful, and I also recognize this is very unique. I know this situation doesn't happen in every family. But for me, once my family moved closer, it was really a catalyst for my family to talk about future planning. My mom and I attended future planning sessions together, and together attended a presentation that Katie was giving at our state's ARC conference. And then my mom and my sister and I started making trips to disability service providers together. In the course of the move, my dad had started to go through a reorganization process of all the family's important documents like wills and other things. And he started to question whether these documents were transferable state to state. And so all of this really provided an opening for our family to talk about future planning. I shared that I really wanted us to start talking about this more. And my parents listened, and I think we were each in our own way relieved that the issue was on the table. It seemed like it was the right time. Now, I recognize that there could have been, and maybe should have been, other right times before. But for my family, this was the right time that we capitalized on. Through my connections with our state chapter of the SLN in Illinois, I had befriended a sibling who is also an attorney who specializes in future planning for families with a family member with disabilities. For me, knowing the attorney made the process feel more comfortable. Well, I mean, comfortable is kind of a relative word. You're all sitting around a table talking about a myriad of worst case scenarios. So it wasn't exactly comfortable, but they were really important conversations. And they were things we hadn't talked openly about before. And remarkably and surprisingly, they were things that we agreed on. But I guess in some ways that isn't surprising because we've been living our whole lives working towards some of these agreements. For example, Emily is her own guardian, and in my family, we place a high value on that. We included Emily in these future planning conversations in a way that we thought was helpful. The detailed description and the large stacks of paperwork in the attorney's office was kind of overwhelming. And so we had some of the conversations with Emily, who has a lot of anxiety about transition in the comfort of our own home. And then we brought her into the office as well for signings as necessary. We also included my husband in the conversations at home and at the attorney's office, which was important. My parents had expressed their concern that he not feel overwhelmed, and it was really important in my family for him to be able to say that he chose his role and he considered himself an important part of our future plan. So for my family, we still consider ourselves very much in progress on future planning because we're still searching for the right living setting for Emily. Emily now lives with my parents, which works, but Emily has expressed, and we all agree, that she might live in a more independent setting, and we're searching for that setting. So sometimes it worries me that we haven't quite finalized that situation, but I take comfort in knowing that the conversation is in progress and ongoing, and we are all talking about what would be best for Emily. I share this ongoing challenge to illustrate the point that although my family now has written on paper this, nice, neat, tidy, 90-page notarized, law-abiding future planning document, we're still in progress on future planning. Future planning, I've realized, is not one conversation, but an ongoing process. Also, having my sister living closer has helped me realize that future planning isn't all just about wills and finances. It's also about thinking about how my sister lives her life. Now that we live closer together, I'm reminded of the importance of likes and dislikes for Emily. Things like her worst fear is that the power will go out, and she loves to eat ice cream even though it doesn't really agree with her stomach. And it's really important for her to go to church. If I didn't see Emily so regularly, or maybe if you'd asked me these things before she lived closer, I might have missed some of these important pieces of who she is. And so I've learned that this sharing information is an important part of future planning too. One of my very wise friends who is a sibling shared this piece of advice with me when we were talking about future planning. You have to get to know your sibling as an adult, not as the kid that you grew up with. So how to get the conversation started? Getting the conversation started is difficult, but the ARC Center for Future Planning is a great resource for siblings and families. I encourage you to check out their website. They have an interactive site that helps families work through the areas of planning and saves the information in a way that family members can share and update along the way. They've also developed a tip sheet that includes ways to break the ice to get the conversation started. We encourage siblings to talk to parents about why planning for the future is so important. Tell them how it could help you, how it could help your sib with a disability and the whole family. Be honest about your hopes and fears. And think about the roles that you are interested in playing. What information do you need help with in order to play this role? Also, think about responsibilities you don't feel comfortable playing in the future. Additionally, think about the people in your brother or sister's life that should be part of the conversation and whether you should all talk as a group or talk with some people individually. Make sure to talk to your sibling with disabilities about what it means to plan for the future. Give him or her time to think about the things ahead of time and prepare for conversations. Think of strategies you might need to use to include your sibs in the conversation. For families that are spread across the country or the world, you might need to connect through some sort of technology, using the phone or Skype. There are other resources as well, and we've collected them here. The Sibling Survival Guide has wonderful information for adults to navigate the journey of being a sibling. There's a chapter on planning for the future that is co-authored by Katie, and there's also a lot of great information about alternatives to guardianship. If you don't already own a copy of the Sibling Survival Guide, it can be ordered on Amazon. Additionally, the Special Needs Alliance is a national nonprofit with attorneys dedicated to practice of disability and public benefits law. This is a great resource where you can find a lot of information, including attorneys who focus their practice in the disability law arena. You can search by your states, and some of the laws that need to be kept up with are state specific. There's the National Resource Center for Supported Decision-Making. Supported decision-making is about supporting people with disabilities to make decisions without taking away their rights. The National Resource Center for Supported Decision-Making builds on and extends the work of Quality Trust's Jenny Hatch Justice Project. It has successfully advocated for changes in law, policy, and practice to increase self-determination and demonstrated supported decision-making to be a valid, less restrictive alternative to guardianship. This center is a great resource for you to know about. Additionally, Texas, the tcdd.texas.gov is a great place to look. The Texas DDC supported decision-making page has some great resources to create supported decision-making agreements. In 2015, Texas became the first state to put supported decision-making into law. Oh, and I'm seeing a note from Nick in the chat box as well, just saying the same thing, and should be proud that Texas was one of the first to advocate for supported decision-making legally. The Future is Now is an evidence-based curriculum created at UIC's RRTC-DD that helps families start talking and planning for the future in a family-centered manner. What's unique about this program is that it's specifically designed to include people with disabilities as part of the process, along with siblings, parents, and anyone the person with disabilities wants to include. And the My Life book is a future planning workbook for people with developmental disabilities.
And I'll add that the Future is Now curriculum is actually being implemented in Texas now, and Nick, I know, has been trained on it and has been doing future planning with siblings and their families in the state. So if you're interested in getting more involved in that, feel free to reach out to Nick at the Texas Center for Disability Studies. So we've talked about future planning. Beyond future planning, adult siblings can play a role in so many other things. Similar to the peer nature of the relationship in childhood, siblings are often able to connect on issues they have in common with someone close in age, like relationships and sexuality, voting, technology, and employment. Parents do a great job with these issues, of course, but as members of the same generation, siblings might have really valuable insight. We want to talk about advocacy as a topic that pertains to siblings. Advocacy is the act of supporting a cause or to uphold or defend as true or right. People can be intimidated by the word advocacy. There's a wide range of activities and actions that encompass advocacy, and we want to talk about what that means for siblings of people with disabilities. Siblings are natural-born allies. For me as a sibling, I learned to be an advocate at a young age when people would stare at my sister or use names such as the R word. I've had to answer questions from my classmates and figure out how to adapt environments so that my siblings were included. And all of these skills have helped me well in my life, and I continue to be an advocate. There are multiple levels of advocacy. The graphic on the slide shows several gears that work together to move something forward. People can be at different levels related to different situations. All of the levels are important to promote change. Individual advocacy is speaking up to make change that will impact your own life or the life of an individual, such as a family member. And siblings often play a role in supporting their siblings. This can occur in a wide variety of ways. One sibling told us that an advocacy role that she played was to talk to the direct support professional in her sibling's home to explain the family traditions, activities, and routines that were most important to her brother. This important insight into her brother's life provided valuable direction on what her sib wants in his life. I would guess that if you think about your own situation, many of you are involved in individual advocacy. Community advocacy is when people bring their individual voice together with a group to create more power for change or provide collaboration. There's power in numbers, and when siblings join with others, they can affect even more change together beyond their individual family and have a positive impact on a larger group. There are a few ways to get involved in community advocacy with a group, and the State Sibling Support Group in Texas, the Texas Sibling Leadership Network, is one group that is really doing exciting work that I encourage you to get involved with. Siblings can help their brothers and sisters with disabilities by connecting them to self-advocacy groups such as SABE, which stands for Self Advocates Becoming Empowered. Siblings can play a role in community advocacy by serving as volunteers or board members for agencies, schools, and organizations that provide services to their siblings. And siblings can often play an important advocacy role by encouraging and educating the organizations and schools that serve their siblings to create a culture that supports whole family planning and sibling input. So you could participate in a rally related to an issue. You could do some educating. There's just a wide variety of different possibilities. And then legislative advocacy is educating policymakers who have decision-making authority to impact larger change at the systems level. This is an important way of making change, though the way that things trickle down and are then implemented at the state and local level may take time and may not look exactly like the way advocates have been working towards. I believe that siblings are an untapped constituency or group for policy advocacy, and by engaging them, there's really this potential to grow the power of the disability movement exponentially. This is because there's more power in numbers. As siblings, we have this personal experience where we get it, though not all siblings are often involved in the larger disability advocacy movement. Siblings aren't always sure of their role or how to be an advocate and ally both for and with their brothers and sisters with disabilities. It's a process that I know that I'm still learning how to do well. There are many ways to advocate, and it can look different depending on your personal preference and the particular situation. For example, you could meet with key decision makers and educate them about your issue. You could write a letter to the editor of a newspaper sharing your opinion. You could call or visit a legislator's office to share your story and ask for change regarding a policy. There's not just one way to advocate, and often multiple methods done by many people is the best way to get attention around your issue to affect change. If you go to the Sibling Leadership Network's Policy and Advocacy page, you can find some valuable information that our Policy and Advocacy Committee has shared. We have a sibling talking point sheet with facts about siblings that people may not think about very often. And this can be used not only in advocacy, but when conversing with the media about siblings. You can use this resource as a guide for you to talk about or write about the sibling experience with legislators or the media. Instead of giving this sheet to people, these talking points can serve as your notes to help you talk about the issue and bring up key points. You can adapt and expand on these talking points, and it can be especially useful to you to share personal examples or stories along with the talking points. Also, the Sibling Leadership Network Advocacy Letter Writing Tips is a sheet that provides tips to effectively reach out to legislators and write letters to share your story and ask specifically for them to make change around something important to you and your family. Legislators especially appreciate letters from people who are their constituents and live in the state or district that they're elected to govern. The SLN has a policy and advocacy committee that creates policy briefs, coordinates campaigns, and works to communicate the advocacy message. We've realized that there are a lot of policies out there for families that don't include siblings. And one of the best examples is FMLA, or the Family and Medical Leave Act, which has the word family, yet does not specifically include siblings. Well, we've had some developments over the years in this area where, along with a number of other advocates, people from the Sibling Leadership Network met with the Department of Labor to educate them about the importance of including siblings. And the Department of Labor, as a result, updated their fact sheets to provide some clearer guidance that some siblings may be covered under FMLA in certain circumstances, such as when they are in loco parentis or acting like a parent. And while this is helpful in some ways, the Sibling Leadership Network is still really advocating for siblings to be more broadly included under the law, whether we're acting like a parent or just acting like a sibling. Because there are many siblings that get into a difficult situation of wanting to take leave to provide care for a brother or sister with a disability, and the law, it does not clearly cover them at this point. So there's still work to do. We often hear from siblings that they advocate for their brothers and sisters in various ways, but some siblings are unsure how to advocate with their siblings. So the slogan, "Nothing about us without us," is something many of you might be familiar with. This is something that the Sibling Leadership Network really believes in. A number of years ago, I attended the Self-Advocates Becoming Empowered conference with my sister, Patrice, and it was a great experience. Patrice got to meet a lot of great self-advocates and learn about finding her voice. When Patrice and I were at the SAVE conference, we hung out much of the time, though there were some self-advocate friends that made sure Patrice had her own time away from me. And there were also times where I got a little nervous and was a bit of a mother hen and worried that Patrice would get lost or not find her way back because it was a new environment for her. And I kept thinking, oh my gosh, my mother's going to kill me if something happens, because this was one of the first times that my mom had sort of entrusted Patrice with me, and we were out of state at this conference. So luckily, she didn't get lost. She had a lot of fun, and she made new friends at the conference. Also, there were times where I kind of reverted to this old habit of talking for Patrice when it took her longer to respond, because she has a harder time articulating herself and processing information. And when that happened, some of the other people at the conference, some other self-advocates, were really good at ignoring me. And they just patiently kept waiting for Patrice to share or just ask the question again. And it was a way of them kind of putting me in check in a way to remind me, like they were asking Patrice, not me, and I don't need to be speaking for her, even though I have tended to do that in the past. And it's also been helpful for me and our family to practice that more, to allow Patrice to have the opportunity to speak up for herself. It's taken a long time. It's something that we're still working on. But in this situation, I learned a lot from self-advocates about how to be an ally and how to provide support in a new way for my sister, and how to be a better sister in certain ways. And I really believe that everyone should attend a self-advocacy conference. If you haven't experienced it already, I encourage you to look at the state or national level and support your sibling with a disability to attend, and then you yourself attend as well to learn a lot.
So I want to share with you some really important resources. We have information about books, online connections, and in-person opportunities for siblings. We know that siblings traditionally have not had opportunities to meet with other siblings as peers, especially as adults. What we've heard and learned is that many siblings wait until they're in their 20s, 30s, or 40s to meet other siblings. Can you imagine if we allowed parents to wait this long to connect with other parents of people with disabilities? We really believe in the power of peer support. As we mentioned at the beginning, the Sibling Leadership Network is a national organization, and we know that state chapters are critical in providing connections for siblings, and that's why we're so excited about the growth of the sibling support in Texas. The Texas Sibling Network aims to create a community for adult siblings of people with disabilities by siblings of people with disabilities. Texas Sibling Network, or TSN, will provide support, resources, leadership, and advocacy skill-building opportunities for siblings. So the Texas Sibling Network is housed at TCDS as the state chapter of the National Sibling Leadership Network, and they are expanding to create local chapters throughout Texas so that different local experiences and opportunities are available. There's a long-term vision to have local chapters throughout Texas on college and university campuses, and to serve as a hub for information for siblings. Currently, there are chapters in Austin and Houston. So on the screen right now, I'm showing the Texas Sibling Network website, and there's lots of great information on the website. I do want to call your attention to just a few of the important pieces of information that you'll find here, but I encourage you to go and spend time on the page and find out all the information that's there. The first blue arrow points you to resources for siblings in Texas. This is a one-pager, a double-sided one-pager that I encourage you to print not only for yourself, but also to share with others, maybe colleagues, families, and your siblings' provider organization. It's a handy sheet that addresses sibling resources for all ages. The second blue arrow points you to the important role of siblings in Texas. This is a 4-page summary of research compiled by the Sibling Leadership Network. And I think you'd be interested in this literature review and relevant information. I think it pertains to the advocacy that Katie talked about. So it's a wonderful document for you to print, and you could leave it with elected officials or anyone who's interested in learning more about siblings. And the third blue arrow points you to the sibling survey flyer. So for those of you on the call who are brothers and sisters, if you have not yet completed the sibling survey, please do this today. This survey is intended for siblings 18 and older to share their experiences as a brother or sister. This is a critical and unique opportunity for you to have your voice added. The information that's provided will be used to grow the supports for siblings. And so I can't emphasize enough how much we encourage you to do this. So as you can see, I've provided the direct link, and you can also access that from the TSN website. If you have other brothers and sisters that you know within your family or outside of your family, please encourage them to complete the survey as well. I also want to provide information about how you can get connected with the Texas Sibling Network. So one way is that you can send an email to Nick, who is leading the Texas Sibling Network. You can also go to the website, which we just showed you. When you get on the website, we would encourage you to subscribe to the TSN newsletter. It's a free newsletter that's provided and gives lots of great information. You can also join the Texas Sibling Network Facebook page, as well as the Twitter and Instagram accounts. And then, as I mentioned, these 2 local chapters that have developed in Texas, we'd encourage you, if you are in the Austin or Houston area, to additionally connect with those chapters via the Facebook pages. So being involved with TSN is a great way to connect with other siblings. We really believe in the power of peer support, and I can say personally, through sibling gatherings, I've really experienced there's just this magic that happens. There's something indescribable about sharing our sibling stories with people who really get it. And it's helped me realize that I'm not alone, that there are other people on this journey too, and that we can listen to each other and provide insight, but it's a judgment-free way to do it. So I encourage you to connect with this group. In Austin and Houston, they are holding in-person meetings, and then I'm seeing the reminder here, the UT Austin student chapter is going to launch imminently. So thanks for the reminder about that, Nick. That's so exciting that the UT Austin student chapter will also soon be starting. And we'll have some opportunities for in-person meetups as well. So in addition to all of those great on-the-ground resources in Texas that are so powerful, I did want to let you know about some online resources as well. SibNet is a Facebook group for adult siblings, and it's only for adult siblings. So it's a great online forum for people across the country and around the world to connect with each other. It is co-hosted by the Sibling Leadership Network and the Sibling Support Project, and it's a space where people can share information about services, share good news about siblings, talk about any family concerns. There really are a lot of insights and observations that only other siblings are likely to attend. You'll also see there that there is Sib20, which is kind of a branch of SibNet that is intended for the unique needs of siblings who are in their 20s, kind of in that transition stage, so they're welcome to be in the SibNet group as well, but they have their own space also on SIB20. And then siblingresources.org, this is a great resource that developed from a grant from the New York DDPC that has allowed a collaboration between SLN and the Yangtan Institute of Cornell University and our state sibling chapter, SIBS New York. So while this is a project that emerged from New York, everyone is welcome, and I encourage you to visit the site to learn more about sibling issues and resources. When you get there, you'll find that there is a self-paced online learning module. One branch is for siblings and one is for professionals in the disability field. And so that's a really great opportunity for learning and connection as well. There are also several books that we would recommend. As I mentioned previously, the Sibling Survival Guide has different chapters on different topics, one on future planning, one on advocacy, as well as the books Thicker Than Water and Being the Other One as great resources for siblings. And then our final great opportunity for siblings to come together is we're excited about our upcoming national SLN conference in St. Paul, Minnesota on June 22nd and 23rd of this year. This is really a great opportunity for people to come together and share and learn and connect. And I warmly welcome each of you to join us there. This conference occurs immediately prior to the AAIDD conference. So if you happen to be interested in staying for that conference, it aligns perfectly. Our registration for this conference, the 2019 National Sibling Leadership Network Conference, will open in about 2 weeks. And I'm sure you'll see information on the SLN page as well as Facebook page. And then I would imagine Texas will share that as well and get the word out for anyone who's interested. So that is our presentation for today. We are so grateful for the time that you have spent with us, and we will open it up for questions that you can put in the chat box. While I'm waiting for questions to come in, I did want to let you know, following the webinar, in a few minutes, we will send out a short satisfaction survey. It is only 4 questions. It will not take you long at all, but we really encourage you to complete the survey and share the information about your perspective on the webinar with us. It's very valuable for planning future webinars.
And this is Katie. I switched the slides back because there's one question that somebody asked related to the resources on this slide. You wanted to kind of take a look at it more, especially the life book related to future planning. I put it on this slide so that people could kind of see that related to the question. And then we have another question. Will the presentation be sent out so we can click on all the links? Yes, we will share this afterwards so you can get a chance to really go into the resources that we've shared and have a copy of those. And most of these you can also find on the Sibling Leadership Network website. Thank you for that question. Are there any other questions? Amy, do you want to share about the follow-up?
Yes, I just did. We will be sending out the survey in just a little bit. And like I said, it's a very short survey, and we would welcome you to just fill that out briefly. That is different than the sibling survey that we mentioned earlier in the webinar. The survey that we're sending out immediately following this is just 4 questions about your satisfaction on the webinar, but we will also be encouraging you to complete the survey about sibling perspectives and experiences that we referenced earlier.
Well, thank you all so much. Look for the email with more information to come. Let's see, we might have one more question. Okay, somebody said, I think this is great. Sibling resources weren't around when my sibling and I were growing up. I am the person with a disability as well as being a professional in the disability field. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And you can always feel free to contact myself or Amy via email, and also please be in touch with Nick, who's based in Texas, and get connected to the work happening for siblings in Texas. Thank you all for your time, and look for emails to come with the satisfaction survey about this webinar, the PowerPoint slides, as well as some information related to the Texas sibling survey for you to complete as well, and all of the resources. Have a good rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.